Hello, story enthusiasts, and welcome to Cheating Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued support. We'd love to hear, which country or city are you joining us from today? Share in the comments section. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Architect of Fortune. Vincent Nielsen hadn't built his real estate empire by being soft. At 45, he possessed the sharp instincts of a predator beneath his tailored suits and genteel charm. His company, Meridian Properties, had transformed from a small investment firm into Phoenix's most formidable real estate development corporation over the past decade. The late afternoon sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of his downtown penthouse office as he studied the scale model of his latest project, a luxury residential complex that would redefine the city skyline. $3 billion. The largest development in Arizona's history. Vincent allowed himself a rare smile. Mr. Nielsen, your wife is online too. His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. Vincent picked up, cradling the phone between his ear and shoulder as he continued examining the model. Laurel, I'm in the middle of something. Don't forget about the Harrison fundraiser tonight. Laurel's voice carried its characteristic musical quality, though lately, Vincent had detected something different, a brittleness beneath the melody. I haven't forgotten. Vincent straightened, walking to the window. Have you confirmed with the Kellers? Brady said they'll meet us there, but... She hesitated. Dominic mentioned he might be late. Something about finalizing the Westlake acquisition. Vincent's jaw tightened imperceptibly at the mention of Dominic Falco, his business partner of 7 years. Dominic had come into his life when Meridian was poised for explosive growth but needed additional capital. The man had brought money, connections, and a certain ruthlessness that complemented Vincent's calculated approach. Tell him not to be late. The senator doesn't appreciate tardiness. I'm not your secretary, Vincent, Laurel replied with unusual sharpness. Vincent paused, studying his reflection in the window glass. At what point had his wife's tone toward him changed? When had the admiration in her eyes dulled? 15 years of marriage had transformed from passionate to perfunctory, and lately, to something disturbingly cold. I'll see you at home, he said finally, ending the call without waiting for her response. Hours later, Vincent walked into their Paradise Valley mansion, a modernist monument of glass and stone. The house was silent except for the faint sound of running water from the master suite. In the bedroom, Vincent found Laurel's phone lying on the unmade bed. He rarely invaded her privacy, not out of respect, but because he'd never felt the need. He trusted no one, but he controlled everything in his life with such precision that betrayal seemed implausible. The notification that illuminated her screen changed that calculation instantly. A text from Dominic. Can't wait to feel you again. Make an excuse tonight. My place after. Vincent stood motionless, the phone in his hand, as something ancient and cold crystallized within him. He wasn't surprised by the betrayal. In his world, loyalty was always conditional. He was surprised by the flicker of pain he felt before it was subsumed by something far more potent. Calculated rage. He placed the phone exactly as he'd found it, then walked to his study and poured himself 2 fingers of bourbon. As he sipped the amber liquid, Vincent didn't plot hasty revenge. Instead, his mind worked like the architect he'd once been, designing a structure of vengeance so meticulous that by the time its scaffolding became visible, it would already be too late for those caught within it. Chapter 2. Foundations of Deceit. 3 months passed, and Vincent became a study in controlled observation. He never confronted Laurel about the text. Instead, he watched and waited, documenting patterns with clinical detachment. Tuesday afternoons. Thursday evenings when Vincent had standing meetings with overseas investors. Sunday mornings when he supposedly played golf. The affair operated like clockwork, and Vincent couldn't decide what disgusted him more, the betrayal itself or its predictable banality. In his private office at home, Vincent reviewed the files his private investigator had delivered. Photos of Laurel entering Dominic's downtown penthouse. Screenshots of texts detailing their liaisons. Call logs. Hotel receipts. A comprehensive dossier of infidelity. Mr. Nielsen? Benjamin Hayward, his longtime attorney and perhaps the closest thing Vincent had to a friend, entered the room. You said it was urgent. Vincent gestured to the chair across from him. I need to restructure Meridian's ownership. Is there something I should know? Benjamin's weathered face registered concern. At 67, He'd been with Vincent since the beginning, guiding the legal architecture of his empire. Dominic is sleeping with my wife. Benjamin didn't flinch. In their world, such revelations were disappointingly common. Do you have proof? Vincent slid the folder across the desk. Enough to bury them both. Benjamin examined the contents, his expression grim. What's your play? I want everything. His shares, his properties, his dignity. The partnership agreement gives him significant protection, as does your prenuptial agreement with Laurel. Vincent smiled thinly. Legal agreements are just words on paper, Ben, and words can be reinterpreted. Over the next 2 hours, they outlined a strategy that would make Machiavelli proud. Vincent had always maintained multiple corporate structures, ownership stakes hidden within layers of LLCs and offshore entities. Now these would become weapons. The Westlake acquisition, Vincent said, referencing the major development project Dominic had spearheaded. I want control transferred to High Point Holdings. Benjamin frowned. Dominic doesn't know you control High Point. Exactly. We'll structure it as a joint venture. When the deal closes next month, ownership reverts fully to High Point under the secondary clause, which I doubt he's read closely. And his home. The mortgage is through Meridian Finance. I want to call in the loan. Benjamin removed his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Vincent, this is extreme. Have you considered simply divorcing Laurel and buying out Dominic's shares? Vincent leaned forward, his voice quiet. When someone takes what's mine, I don't negotiate. I annihilate. What Vincent didn't share was the deeper wound beneath his rage. Before Laurel, before his fortune, Vincent had grown up watching his father, a small construction contractor, lose everything when his business partner emptied their accounts and disappeared. The bankruptcy, the foreclosure, his father's subsequent suicide, these had forged Vincent's pathological need for control and his merciless response to betrayal. After Benjamin left, Vincent opened his desk drawer and removed a small velvet box. Inside lay the diamond earrings he'd bought for Laurel's upcoming birthday. He snapped the box shut and dropped it into the trash. That night at dinner, Vincent watched Laurel pushing food around her plate. Her raven hair fell forward, obscuring part of her face. Once, he would have reached across to tuck it behind her ear. Now, he simply observed the stranger his wife had become. The Westlake closing is next month, Vincent said casually. Dominic seems confident we'll double our investment within 2 years. Laurel looked up, her fork pausing midair. That's good news. He's been putting in a lot of hours on it. I'm impressed by his commitment. A flash of something, guilt, perhaps, crossed her features before she composed herself. He's always been dedicated. Dedicated, Vincent repeated, swirling the wine in his glass. Yes, Dominic has always taken what he wants, hasn't he? Later, as he worked in his study, Vincent received a text from an unknown number. Package delivered. All systems operational. The surveillance equipment had been installed in Dominic's penthouse. Now, Vincent would have eyes and ears in the inner sanctum of their betrayal. Chapter 3. The Invisible Hand. Melissa Porter prided herself on being a good sister. 2 years younger than Laurel, she'd always played the role of confidant and accomplice. So when Laurel had tearfully confessed her affair with Dominic 6 months ago, Melissa had provided alibis, excuses, and the emotional support her sister desperately needed. You deserve to be happy, Melissa had assured her. Vincent treats you like another acquisition. Now, seated across from Vincent in a discreet corner of an upscale restaurant, Melissa felt a chill despite the warm Arizona evening. Thank you for meeting me, Vincent said, his tone pleasant but his eyes cold. Melissa shifted uncomfortably. You said it was about Laurel's birthday surprise. In a manner of speaking, Vincent slid a manila envelope across the table. Open it. Inside were photos, Melissa dropping Laurel off at Dominic's building. Melissa answering Laurel's phone while her sister showered after a rendezvous. Melissa lying directly to Vincent's face about Laurel's whereabouts. I can explain, she stammered, her face draining of color. No need. Vincent's smile never reached his eyes. You're fired, effective immediately. Melissa's position as marketing director at one of Vincent's subsidiary companies had been her dream job. You can't. I already have. Security has packed your office. Your access was revoked 20 minutes ago. This is because I protected my sister? From you. Vincent leaned forward. This is because loyalty matters to me, Melissa. And you chose the wrong side. I'll tell Laurel everything. I'll expose what you're doing. By all means. Vincent's tone was almost bored. Tell her how you've been helping her deceive me. Tell her how you've lost your job and your reputation. Tell her whatever you want. And make sure to mention that I know everything. Melissa left the restaurant in tears, while Vincent calmly finished his scotch. The first domino had fallen exactly as planned. That night, Laurel stormed into his study, eyes blazing. You fired my sister? Because what? She didn't kiss your ring properly at the charity gala. Vincent barely looked up from his computer. Your sister's performance has been substandard for months. The decision was made by the board. Bullshit. You control that board like you try to control everything else. Vincent finally met her gaze. Careful, Laurel. Your concern for your sister's job performance seems disproportionate. Something in his tone made her pause. What does that mean? Nothing at all. He returned to his work. Perhaps she should have been more discreet in her professional conduct. After Laurel left, Vincent pulled up the surveillance feed from Dominic's penthouse. Right on schedule, his business partner was on the phone, pacing nervously. She's suspicious, Dominic was saying. Her sister just got fired. Yes, of course I think it's connected. No, he couldn't possibly know about us. I've been careful. Vincent zoomed in on Dominic's face, studying the fear etched there. The man who had taken Vincent's wife would soon learn the true cost of his betrayal. But not yet. Vincent was still laying the groundwork, still positioning his pieces. The next morning, Vincent called Howard Byrne, CEO of First Arizona Bank and a longtime business associate. Howard, remember that favor you owe me? I'm calling it in. By afternoon, Dominic's personal credit lines had been frozen pending a routine compliance review. By evening, rumors of Meridian facing liquidity issues began circulating among a select group of investors, ones who coincidentally held significant positions in Dominic's pet projects. Vincent worked methodically, invisibly, applying pressure points that would initially seem like unfortunate coincidences. Dominic's assistant quit suddenly. The permit process for his passion project, a boutique hotel in Scottsdale, hit unexpected delays. Small things, but they would accumulate. Meanwhile, Vincent increased his attentiveness to Laurel, sending flowers, suggesting dinner dates, behaving like a husband trying to rekindle a marriage. The confusion on her face was palpable, and that confusion would soon turn to fear as Vincent's trap began to close around her and her lover. Chapter 4. Tightening the Noose. The annual Meridian Properties Gala was Phoenix's premier corporate event, drawing the city's elite to celebrate the company's successes and announce its future ventures. Vincent stood at the center of it all, champagne flute in hand, the picture of success in his bespoke tuxedo. To another record-breaking year, he announced to the assembled crowd, raising his glass. And to new beginnings. His gaze found Laurel across the room, stunning in an emerald gown that caught the light as she moved. Beside her stood Dominic, handsome and charismatic in his tailored suit, wearing the confident smile of a man who believed himself untouchable. If only they knew that tonight marked the beginning of their end. Vincent navigated through the crowd, accepting congratulations and discussing future projects. When he finally approached Laurel and Dominic, he embraced his business partner with practiced warmth. The man of the hour, Dominic said, clapping Vincent on the shoulder. The Westlake deal alone will put us on the national map. About that, Vincent replied, lowering his voice conspiratorially. I've been meaning to discuss some adjustments to the structure. Dominic's smile faltered slightly. Adjustments? Everything's set for closing next week. Nothing significant. Just some tax considerations my team has raised. We'll discuss it Monday. Before Dominic could press further, Vincent turned to Laurel, taking her hand and brushing his lips against her knuckles. You outshine everyone here. The confusion in her eyes was delicious. For weeks now, he'd been alternating between cold indifference and unexpected tenderness, keeping her off balance, making her question whether her affair remained undiscovered. Dance with me, he said, not waiting for her response before leading her to the dance floor. As they moved to the music, bodies close but spirits separated by a chasm of deceit, Vincent whispered in her ear, You smell like his cologne. Laurel stiffened in his arms. What? Dominic's cologne. It's distinctive, isn't it? Sandalwood and something else, citrus, perhaps. The color drained from her face. Vincent, not here, he murmured, maintaining his smile for the benefit of watching eyes. Not now, but soon. We'll have a very interesting conversation, you and I. The remainder of the dance passed in tense silence, Laurel's body rigid with fear. When the music ended, Vincent escorted her back to their table, where Dominic waited with a brittle smile. "Everything all right?" he asked, noticing Laurel's pallor. "Perfect," Vincent replied, his hand resting possessively on Laurel's bare shoulder. "I was just telling my wife how grateful I am for her loyalty." The next morning, Vincent called an emergency board meeting. By afternoon, the rumors he'd strategically planted weeks ago had bloomed into full-blown concerns about Dominic's financial stability. The board, primed by Vincent's subtle manipulations, voted unanimously to restructure the Westlake deal, removing Dominic as lead and transferring primary oversight to High Point Holdings. When Dominic burst into Vincent's office later that day, his composure had evaporated entirely. "What the hell is going on?" he demanded, slamming the door. "You've undermined me with the board, frozen me out of Westlake, and now my bank accounts are being audited?" Vincent regarded him calmly from behind his desk. "Business is unpredictable, Dominic. Surely you understand that. This isn't business. This is personal. What have I done to deserve this?" Vincent stood slowly, walking to the bar cart to pour 2 glasses of whiskey. "What have you done?" An interesting question from a man who's been sleeping with my wife for the past 7 months. The blood drained from Dominic's face. "Vincent, I can explain." "No explanations necessary." Vincent handed him a glass with a smile that chilled the room. "In fact, I should thank you. You've shown me a vulnerability in my organization that needed addressing. Now I'm correcting it." "Is that what this is? A correction?" Dominic's hand trembled as he set down the untouched drink. "Vincent, we can resolve this like businessmen. I'll end things with Laurel. I'll sell you my shares at a discount." "Generous, but inadequate." Vincent returned to his desk, pressing a button on his phone. "Security will escort you out. Your access has been revoked, and your personal items will be delivered to your home. You can't just push me out. I own 20% of Meridian." "Actually," Vincent opened a folder on his desk. "As of this morning, your shares have been transferred to cover your outstanding obligations to our subsidiary, High Point Holdings. It seems you signed quite a disadvantageous agreement during the Westlake restructuring." Dominic stared in disbelief as security entered the office. "This isn't over, Vincent." "Oh, but it is." Vincent smiled coldly. "And Dominic? I'd start packing. The bank is foreclosing on your penthouse tomorrow." That evening, Vincent returned home earlier than usual. He found Laurel in their bedroom, frantically packing a suitcase, her face streaked with tears. "Going somewhere?" he asked, leaning against the doorframe. She flinched at his voice, turning to face him with a mixture of fear and defiance. "I'm leaving you. Because I fired your lover today? Or because your sister lost her job covering for your affair?" Laurel's hands froze on the clothing she'd been folding. "How long have you known?" "Long enough to ensure that neither of you will ever recover." Vincent moved into the room, his presence filling the space. "Your lover has lost his company's shares, his home is being foreclosed, and his reputation in this city is finished." "You're a monster," she whispered. "No, Laurel. I'm simply a man who collects what he's owed." Chapter 5. The Confession. The Nielsen house had never felt so suffocating. For 3 days after Vincent's revelation, Laurel remained, trapped by shock and the sudden realization that her escape routes had been systematically eliminated. Dominic wasn't answering her calls. Melissa was unreachable, having apparently left town. And her own bank accounts, joint with Vincent, had been restricted to nominal withdrawals. Vincent continued his routine, leaving for work each morning and returning each evening as if nothing had changed. He spoke to her with cold civility, watching her deterioration with detached interest. On the 4th night, Laurel found herself in their kitchen at midnight, a glass of wine in one hand and her phone in the other, staring at Dominic's unanswered texts. The sound of Vincent's footsteps made her look up. He stood in the doorway, dressed in silk pajama bottoms and nothing else, his physique a reminder of the power that had once attracted her to him. "Can't sleep?" he asked, moving to pour himself a glass of water. "How can you act like this is normal?" Her voice cracked. "Like we're just having a rough patch?" Vincent leaned against the counter, studying her. "What would you prefer? That I rage? Break things? Beg you to love me again? I want you to feel something." Laurel slammed her glass down. Anything human. I feel plenty, he replied calmly. Disappointment. Disgust. A profound desire to see justice served. Justice? She laughed bitterly. You've destroyed lives out of wounded pride. Vincent moved closer, his presence overwhelming in the confined space. You misunderstand. This isn't about pride. It's about consequences. Actions have them. Yours. Dominic's. Melissa's. All of you made choices, knowing the risks. I never meant to hurt you, she whispered. Another lie. He shook his head. You meant exactly that. The affair was your rebellion against everything I represent. The truth of his words struck her like a physical blow. Her relationship with Dominic had begun as an escape from Vincent's controlled world, a way to feel something spontaneous and passionate again. But it had evolved into something deeper, or so she believed. He said he loved me, she admitted quietly. And you believed him. Vincent's smile held genuine pity. Dominic loves opportunity, Laurel. You were simply his way to get closer to my company, my connections. Did you really think it was coincidence that he pursued you right as the Westlake deal was coming together? The doubt that had been gnawing at her expanded. Dominic's increasing distance over the past weeks. His focus on business calls even during their intimate moments. His insistence on knowing Vincent's schedule and business plans. You're lying, she said, but her conviction had faltered. Am I? Vincent pulled out his phone, tapping the screen before sliding it toward her. Listen for yourself. The recording played clearly in the silent kitchen, Dominic's voice speaking to someone unknown. Vincent doesn't suspect a thing. His wife gives me everything I need to know about his movements, his plans. Once the Westlake deal closes, we'll have everything we need to push him out completely. Laurel's world collapsed around her. The betrayal she'd committed paled against the one she now faced. When was this? Last month. Your lover has been playing you as thoroughly as you've been playing me. The wine glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the tile floor. Vincent didn't move to help as she knelt, mindlessly trying to gather the broken pieces, cutting her finger in the process. I've been such a fool, she whispered, watching blood mix with wine. Yes, Vincent agreed dispassionately. The question is, what will you do now? Laurel looked up at him, broken in ways that transcended the physical. What choices do I have left? You've taken everything. Not everything. Not yet. Vincent crouched beside her, careful of the glass. I want complete honesty, Laurel. Every detail of your betrayal. Every plan Dominic shared. Every person who knew and helped. Give me that, and perhaps we can discuss arrangements. And if I refuse? His expression hardened. Then I continue dismantling everything and everyone you care about, piece by piece, until nothing remains. The next morning, Vincent sat in his home office, recording Laurel's full confession. For hours, she detailed the affair. How it began with a chance meeting when Vincent was overseas, how Dominic had pursued her relentlessly, how she'd eventually surrendered to the excitement he offered. She confessed Melissa's role, the alibis provided, the excuses made, even the times she'd lied directly to Vincent's face on Laurel's behalf. She revealed the network of enablers. The hotel concierge who'd been bribed to maintain their privacy, the restaurant maitre d' who'd arranged private dining rooms, even Vincent's former assistant who'd altered his calendar occasionally to facilitate their meetings. Most valuable were Dominic's confidences, business strategies he'd planned, leveraged positions Vincent wasn't supposed to know about, and most damning, his connection to a rival development group that had been suspiciously well-informed about Meridian's confidential plans. When she finished, emotionally exhausted and morally bankrupt, Vincent simply nodded and stopped the recording. What happens now? She asked, her voice raw. Now, Vincent replied. We have a conversation that's long overdue. Chapter 6. The Reckoning. The penthouse apartment where Dominic had taken Laurel countless times now felt like a mausoleum. Most of his possessions had been packed into boxes, the furniture covered with sheets. The foreclosure notice had arrived that morning, giving him 48 hours to vacate. His phone rang, Laurel's ringtone. After days of ignoring her calls, something made him answer. We need to talk, she said without preamble. Vincent knows everything. I'm aware, Dominic replied bitterly. He's systematically destroying me. He wants to see us. Both of us. Tonight. Dominic laughed hollowly. So he can gloat? No thanks. He says he's willing to negotiate. To give you back your shares, stop the foreclosure. The desperation in her voice matched his own internal state. After days of fruitless attempts to salvage his business interests, of watching his assets frozen and his reputation tarnished, even a slim hope seemed worth pursuing. Fine. Where? The house. 8 o'clock. The Nielsen residence, a modernist palace that Dominic had once envied, now loomed before him like a fortress of doom. As the security gate opened automatically, he felt a chill that had nothing to do with the desert evening breeze. Inside, Vincent waited in his study, Laurel already seated on one of the leather sofas, looking small and defeated. Vincent, by contrast, appeared completely at ease, offering Dominic a drink as if welcoming an old friend. Scotch. You always preferred the Macallan 25, as I recall. Dominic remained standing. Let's skip the pleasantries. Laurel said you're willing to negotiate. Did she? Vincent glanced at his wife. That's not precisely what I said, but no matter. Please sit. Once Dominic reluctantly took a seat across from Laurel, Vincent began. I've spent the last few days reviewing the damage you've both inflicted. The lies. The betrayal. The attempted corporate espionage. Yes, Dominic, I know about your meetings with Apex Development. Dominic's face registered shock before he could compose himself. That was just exploratory. Nothing came of it. Because I intercepted your communications before anything could. Vincent sipped his drink. Nevertheless, the intent was clear. What do you want from us? Laurel asked, her voice barely audible. I want what was taken from me. Respect. Loyalty. Control. Vincent placed his glass down carefully. But since those are intangibles, I'll settle for watching you both lose everything, as you intended for me. I've already lost everything. Dominic exclaimed. My shares, my home, my reputation. Not everything. Vincent interrupted coldly. Not yet. He pressed a button on a remote, and the large television screen on the wall illuminated with a video feed. Dominic and Laurel in his penthouse, in the most private of moments. Jesus, Vincent, Laurel gasped, covering her mouth. Oh, I have hours of this, Vincent continued conversationally. Quite comprehensive documentation of your affair, including some interesting conversations about me, my business, my vulnerabilities. Dominic lunged forward. You son of a bitch. Sit down, Vincent commanded with such authority that Dominic complied instinctively. Now, here's what's going to happen. Laurel has already provided a complete confession, implicating everyone involved in your little conspiracy. You, Dominic, will do the same. And if I refuse, then this footage goes to every board member, investor, and business associate you have left, along with evidence of your attempted corporate espionage, which, I remind you, is actually illegal. Dominic's face contorted with rage and desperation. What do you want me to say? Everything. Every detail. Every plan. Every accomplice. For the next hour, Vincent recorded Dominic's confession, occasionally prompting with questions that revealed the depth of his knowledge about their schemes. When Dominic finally fell silent, emotionally drained, Vincent nodded in satisfaction. And now, he said quietly, the moment you've both been waiting for. Vincent, Laurel began, a pleading note in her voice. My wife said, I've been sleeping with your business partner for months. It's liberating to finally tell you. Vincent's voice took on a theatrical quality. I replied, I know, go on, tell me more. She said, why aren't you angry? Finally, I said, because your lover doesn't know his company now belongs to me. His house is foreclosed, and your sister who covered for you is now jobless. A heavy silence fell over the room. Dominic stared at Vincent with a mixture of hatred and fear, while Laurel seemed to collapse in on herself. That's it, Dominic finally asked. You brought us here for this performance? No, Vincent replied, standing. I brought you here to witness the beginning of the end. Tomorrow, both of your confessions will be delivered to select individuals. By week's end, everyone in our circle will know exactly what you've done and to whom. You'll destroy yourself in the process, Dominic warned. This kind of scandal will hurt Meridian. A calculated risk, and one I'm prepared to take. Vincent's smile was terrifying in its calmness. Sometimes, to remove a cancer, one must cut deeply. As security escorted Dominic from the property, Vincent turned to Laurel. As for you, my dear wife, I suggest you pack whatever personally belongs to you. The divorce papers will arrive tomorrow. You'll find the terms ungenerous. Vincent, please, she began. The only reason you're not leaving this house penniless tonight is because even my lawyers couldn't completely circumvent Arizona's community property laws. But rest assured, your settlement will reflect the true value of your contribution to this marriage." Left alone in his study, Vincent poured another drink and watched the security footage of Dominic being driven off his property. Phase 1 was complete. The betrayers had been exposed, confronted, and broken. But Vincent's revenge was far from finished. Chapter 7: Ashes and Dust. 3 months after the confrontation, Phoenix society still buzzed with whispers about the Nielsen-Falco scandal. Vincent had released the confession strategically, ensuring maximum damage to both Laurel and Dominic, while preserving Meridian's reputation through carefully worded press releases about unfortunate personal matters and moving forward with renewed focus. Dominic had fled Arizona entirely, his attempts to rebuild elsewhere hampered by the toxic reputation that somehow preceded him to each new city. Last Vincent heard, the man was reduced to working as a sales associate at a mid-tier real estate firm in Albuquerque, living in a rented apartment and driving a leased Honda, a spectacular fall for someone who had once commanded boardrooms and lived in luxury. Laurel had fared marginally better, retreating to a modest condo purchased with her divorce settlement, the bare minimum Vincent's lawyers couldn't prevent her from receiving. Her sister Melissa had returned to Phoenix only to find herself unemployable in their industry, Vincent's influence ensuring that doors remained firmly closed to both women. Vincent himself had emerged from the scandal largely unscathed, his ruthless handling of the betrayal earning him a fearsome new reputation among Phoenix's elite. No one crossed Vincent Nielsen and survived intact. The lesson had been thoroughly learned. On a crisp October morning, Vincent sat in his favorite breakfast spot, reviewing architectural plans for his next development, when a shadow fell across his table. "Mind if I join you?" The woman's voice carried a familiar melody that made Vincent look up sharply. Laurel's mother, Patricia Blackwell, stood before him, elegant as always in a tailored pantsuit that belied her 65 years. "Patricia," Vincent gestured to the empty chair across from him. "This is unexpected." She settled herself gracefully, ordering coffee from the hovering waiter before turning her attention fully to her former son-in-law. "I thought it was time we spoke," she said, her blue eyes, so like Laurel's, studying him intently. "About my daughters." She accepted the coffee, adding a precise amount of cream. "Both of whom are barely functioning human beings now, thanks to you." Vincent smiled thinly. "Your daughters made choices, Patricia. Adult choices with adult consequences. Vindictive consequences engineered by you." She sipped her coffee calmly. "Melissa can't even get an interview in this city. Laurel jumps at shadows. Was destroying them so completely necessary?" "Yes." The simplicity of his answer seemed to surprise her. "Betrayal in my world comes with comprehensive penalties." Patricia regarded him thoughtfully. "You know, when Laurel first brought you home, I warned her about you. I said men who control their emotions that tightly are dangerous when they finally break." Perceptive. She didn't listen. She saw only the successful, handsome man who wanted her, not the wounded boy beneath. Vincent's expression hardened. "If you've come to psychoanalyze me, this conversation is over. I've come to ask you to stop." Patricia leaned forward. "You've won, Vincent. They're broken. Isn't that enough? Laurel is still receiving alimony. Melissa still owns her home. Dominic still draws breath. So no, it's not enough." Patricia's composure cracked slightly. "What more could you possibly want? Justice has no endpoint, Patricia. It simply continues until balance is restored." "This isn't justice," she whispered. "It's vengeance. The distinction matters only to those without power to enforce either." Vincent gathered his plans, signaling the end of their conversation. "Give my regards to your daughters. Tell them I think of them often." The threat implicit in his words made Patricia pale. As Vincent walked away, leaving cash for both their coffees, he felt nothing but cold satisfaction. The Blackwell family had learned a valuable lesson, one his own father had learned too late. In this world, the weak were destroyed by the strong, and Vincent had decided long ago which he would be. Back at Meridian's headquarters, Vincent reviewed the latest reports on Dominic's continued downfall. His former partner had been terminated from even his modest position in Albuquerque after anonymous concerns about his ethics had reached management. Vincent's executive assistant, Trevor Walsh, hired specifically for his pathological attention to detail and complete lack of personal connection to anyone at Meridian, entered with the afternoon schedule. The meeting with Apex Development is confirmed for 3 o'clock, Trevor noted. Their CEO seemed quite anxious to speak with you personally. Vincent allowed himself a small smile. Apex, the very company Dominic had conspired with against him, was now struggling after losing several key projects to Meridian. Their CEO's request for a meeting reeked of desperation. Perfect, Vincent replied. And the other matter? Completed this morning. Ms. Porter's mortgage application was denied by all 4 banks, as arranged. Her current lease expires in 30 days. Melissa's attempt to purchase a small home in Tucson, far from Vincent's sphere of influence, had been her latest effort to rebuild. An effort Vincent had quietly ensured would fail. Some might call his continued pursuit of vengeance excessive. Vincent considered it thorough. The people who had betrayed him needed to understand that their punishment had no expiration date, that his memory and reach were infinite. That evening, as Vincent worked late in his office, his private line rang, a number known to very few. Nielsen, he answered. It's Benjamin. His lawyer's voice sounded strained. There's something you should know. Dominic Falco committed suicide this afternoon. Vincent's hand stilled on the pen he'd been holding, but his voice remained steady. Details. Gunshot. In his apartment in Albuquerque. He left a note naming you specifically, Vincent. This could get messy. Handle it, Vincent replied simply. Make sure any investigation concludes quickly and quietly. After hanging up, Vincent walked to the window, gazing out at the Phoenix skyline he'd helped shape. Dominic's death should have felt like the culmination of his revenge, a victory to be savored. Instead, he felt oddly hollow. Not from guilt. Vincent Nielsen didn't experience that particular emotion. Rather, from the anticlimactic nature of Dominic's final surrender. The man had escaped the full measure of Vincent's planned retribution by taking matters into his own hands. It was, Vincent reflected, the first and only time Dominic had successfully outmaneuvered him. Chapter 8, Blood Ties. Vincent hadn't expected to see Laurel again. The divorce had been finalized, their assets divided, grossly in his favor, and their social circles had zero overlap since he'd methodically excluded her from Phoenix society. Yet here she stood in the lobby of Meridian Properties, looking thinner than he remembered, her once lustrous hair pulled back in a severe ponytail that emphasized the sharp angles of her face. Ms. Blackwell. Trevor addressed her coldly, using her maiden name as Vincent had instructed all staff to do. You don't have an appointment. I need 5 minutes, Laurel replied, her eyes fixed on Vincent as he emerged from the elevator. Please. Vincent considered simply walking past her, but curiosity won out. 5 minutes, he agreed, gesturing toward a small conference room off the lobby. Once inside, with the door closed against curious eyes, Laurel's composure crumpled. Dominic is dead because of you. Dominic is dead because of Dominic, Vincent corrected, remaining standing while she sank into a chair. His choices led him there. You drove him to it. The constant pressure, the blacklisting, the harassment. The consequences, Vincent interrupted. Nothing more. Laurel stared at him, really seeing him perhaps for the first time. What happened to you? What made you this way? Life happened, Laurel. Reality happened. Vincent checked his watch. You have 3 minutes remaining. She took a deep breath, visibly gathering herself. I'm pregnant. The words hung in the air between them, momentarily disrupting Vincent's implacable calm. Pregnant. For months. Her hand moved protectively to her still flat stomach. It's Dominic's. Vincent processed this unexpected development with rapid calculations. And you're telling me this because? Because I have nothing left, she admitted, her voice breaking. My reputation is destroyed. My savings are nearly gone. My family can barely support themselves, let alone help me. I can't raise this child alone. You want money. Vincent's voice was flat. I want peace, Laurel corrected. For this child. For me. For what's left of my family. Name your price, Vincent. What will it take for you to end this vendetta? Vincent studied her. This broken version of the woman he'd once desired enough to marry. Her pregnancy complicated matters, introducing an innocent party into the equation. One who carried Dominic's blood but bore no responsibility for his sins. The child changes nothing, he said finally. Your suffering is the consequence of your choices, not my vindictiveness. Then why continue pursuing Melissa? Why block my mother's business loan last month? Why have Dominic fired from a job that posed no threat to you? Because examples must be made. Because betrayal demanded complete retribution. Because Vincent Nielsen never left enemies with the capacity to rise again. You have 1 minute left, he said instead of answering. Laurel stood, dignity reasserting itself through her desperation. Then I'll use it to tell you this. I'm having this baby. And someday, when they're old enough to understand, I'll tell them exactly who their father was and exactly who destroyed him. I'll tell them about the great Vincent Nielsen, who built an empire but couldn't bear a personal slight without scorching the earth in response. Threats don't become you, Laurel. It's not a threat. It's a promise. Her eyes held his steadily. You may control everything else, but you can't control what I teach Dominic's child about you. After she left, Vincent remained in the conference room, turning this new development over in his mind. A child, Dominic's legacy continuing despite the man's destruction. The notion disturbed him in ways he hadn't anticipated. That evening, Vincent visited the cemetery where his father was buried. He rarely came here, finding little value in communing with the dead, but today felt different. Standing before the simple headstone, Vincent remembered the day he'd found his father, hanging in their garage after losing everything to his treacherous business partner. He remembered the foreclosure notice on the kitchen table, the empty bank accounts, the shattered dreams. Most of all, he remembered his 16-year-old self vowing that he would never be vulnerable again, that he would become so powerful that betrayal would be unthinkable, and if it occurred, his retribution would be biblical. I kept my promise, he told the silent grave. No one takes from me without paying the ultimate price. But as the desert wind whipped around him, Vincent confronted an uncomfortable truth. His vengeance, however complete, hadn't filled the void created by betrayal. It hadn't restored what was taken. It had simply created more emptiness, more destruction, more echoing absence. The revelation didn't soften him. Vincent Nielsen was beyond such transformation. But it did clarify something. The child Laurel carried represented a future beyond this cycle of betrayal and revenge. A future Vincent himself would never have, having long ago decided that children represented vulnerability he couldn't afford. Back at his penthouse, Vincent made a call to Benjamin. I need you to set up a trust, anonymously funded, for the benefit of Laurel Blackwell's unborn child. His attorney's surprise was audible. Vincent, are you sure? The child didn't betray me, Vincent said simply. Make the arrangements. It wasn't mercy. Vincent didn't believe in mercy. It was simply his acknowledgement that vengeance, like everything else, had its proper limits. Chapter 9. Indelible Ink. 1 year after Dominic's suicide, Vincent stood at the pinnacle of his success. Meridian Properties had expanded into 3 new states. The Westlake development had doubled in value, and Vincent's personal fortune had increased accordingly. The scandal that had once threatened to destabilize his empire had instead become a cautionary tale in business circles. Cross Vincent Nielsen and prepare for annihilation. His reputation for ruthlessness had become an asset, intimidating competitors and ensuring absolute loyalty from employees who witnessed firsthand the consequences of betrayal. On this particular morning, Vincent reviewed surveillance photos his private investigator had delivered. Laurel, 7 months after giving birth, pushing a stroller through a park in Portland, Oregon. Her mother walking beside her, apparently having relocated to support her daughter. Melissa, working at a small marketing firm that remained safely outside Vincent's sphere of influence. The Blackwell women had finally understood the fundamental rule. Stay far away from Vincent Nielsen's world, and perhaps you might be permitted to rebuild some semblance of a life. The trust Vincent had established for Dominic's child, a boy named Alexander, according to his sources, would ensure the child's education and basic needs without ever revealing Vincent's involvement. Not mercy, but a calculated decision to end the bloodline of vengeance with his generation. Trevor knocked and entered, looking uncharacteristically hesitant. Mr. Nielsen, there's a Detective Morales here to see you. He says it's regarding Harrison Abernathy. Vincent frowned. Harrison Abernathy had been the concierge who facilitated Laurel and Dominic's hotel meetings, one of the many enablers Vincent had systematically ruined over the past year. Send him in. Detective Gabriel Morales entered with the confident stride of a man comfortable with his authority. Mr. Nielsen, Thank you for seeing me without an appointment. What's this about, detective? Harrison Abernathy was found dead in his apartment last night. Apparent suicide, though we're investigating all possibilities. Vincent's expression remained neutral. Unfortunate, but I fail to see the connection to me. Mr. Abernathy left a rather detailed note. Morales continued, studying Vincent carefully, naming you as the architect of his downfall. Similar, in fact, to the note Dominic Falco left last year. People in difficult circumstances often look for someone to blame, Vincent replied smoothly. I haven't seen or spoken to Abernathy in over a year. And yet, Morales persisted, he lost his job at the Westmont Hotel the day after your divorce was finalized. Subsequently found himself blacklisted from every hospitality position in the state. Recently lost his apartment when the building was purchased by a subsidiary of, he checked his notes, High Point Holdings. Business transactions that affected Mr. Abernathy peripherally are hardly my responsibility. Morales smiled thinly. Mr. Nielsen, I've spent the morning reviewing similar patterns surrounding several individuals connected to your ex-wife and former business partner. The systematic destruction of their lives shows a remarkable consistency. Coincidences happen, detective. Not like this. Morales leaned forward. I'm going to be looking very closely at these coincidences, Mr. Nielsen. Very closely indeed. After the detective left, Vincent remained still, contemplating this unexpected development. Detective Morales represented something Vincent had rarely encountered. Someone completely outside his sphere of influence, immune to his money and power, dedicated to uncovering truths Vincent preferred buried. For the first time in years, Vincent faced an adversary he couldn't simply crush through financial or social means. Later that evening, at home, Vincent opened his father's old wooden box, one of the few possessions he'd kept from childhood. Inside lay newspaper clippings about his father's suicide, the bankruptcy filing, and most significantly, a faded photograph of Richard Harmon, his father's business partner, who had stolen everything and disappeared. Vincent had tracked Harmon down 15 years ago, finding him living comfortably under a new name in Florida. He'd considered various forms of revenge, but ultimately decided on something more elegant. He'd purchased the man's mortgage through a shell company and simply left it alone, allowing Harmon to live in blissful ignorance that his home, his safety, was actually controlled by the son of the man he'd destroyed. Vincent had been saving that particular card to play in his darkest moment, when he needed the purest satisfaction revenge could offer. He'd imagined confronting Harmon, revealing himself, watching recognition and fear dawn on the man's face before destroying him completely. Now, with Detective Morales investigating, that long-planned revenge might need to serve a different purpose. The next morning, Vincent contacted Benjamin with new instructions. By evening, Richard Harmon's comfortable retirement had been upended by a foreclosure notice, followed by IRS audit notifications and the sudden freezing of his accounts. 2 days later, Vincent received the news. Richard Harmon had suffered a fatal heart attack while arguing with bank officials about his suddenly dire financial situation. When Detective Morales returned the following week, Vincent was prepared. I've been looking into your past, Mr. Nielsen, Morales began without preamble. Specifically, your father's suicide after being defrauded by his business partner. Ancient history, Vincent replied evenly. Not so ancient. Richard Harmon died last week under circumstances reminiscent of your other projects. Vincent slid a folder across the desk. Perhaps this will clarify matters, detective. Inside were documents proving that Vincent had only learned of Harmon's whereabouts the day before his death, after decades of searching. Bank records showing Vincent had been in Phoenix when the foreclosure was initiated. Witness statements from Florida confirming Harmon's history of heart problems. All fabricated, of course, but flawlessly. You've been very thorough, Morales commented, examining the documents. I've been very wrongly accused, Vincent corrected. My father's suicide shaped my life, detective. Finding Harmon was a mission I'd pursued for decades. The timing of his death robbed me of closure, not provided it. It was the perfect deflection, using a truth, his father's suicide, to cover a lie, his innocence in Harmon's death. The emotional resonance made the deception impenetrable. Morales eventually left, suspicions intact, but evidence lacking. Vincent had successfully muddied the waters, creating enough reasonable doubt to protect himself from legal consequences. In the months that followed, Vincent gradually scaled back his active pursuit of those who had betrayed him, not from any newfound mercy, but from pragmatic recognition that Detective Morales represented a variable he couldn't fully control. The trust for Dominic's son remained in place, a silent acknowledgement that vengeance had natural boundaries. Laurel and her family were permitted to rebuild their lives in distant Oregon, provided they never returned to Phoenix or spoke publicly about Vincent. As for Vincent himself, he continued building his empire, colder and more isolated than ever. The betrayal had confirmed his fundamental belief: trust was for fools, love was for the weak, and power alone ensured survival. On the 5th anniversary of Dominic's death, Vincent stood in his penthouse office, watching the sun set over Phoenix. His revenge had been comprehensive, his enemies destroyed or neutralized, his power greater than ever. Yet the hollowness remained, the space where connection might have existed, where forgiveness might have offered a different kind of peace. Vincent acknowledged this absence dispassionately, not as a flaw but simply as the cost of absolute control. He raised his glass to the darkening sky, a toast to lessons learned and prices paid. The Nielsen doctrine remained unchanged and unforgiving. Betray me, and I will destroy not just you, but everything and everyone you hold dear. Not from passion or pain, but from principle. In the end, Vincent Nielsen had become exactly what life had taught him to be, a man who could not be betrayed twice, because he never, ever forgot and never, ever forgave. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.